Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans and you're watching the John Cedars channel from the bunker, and it's an extraordinary event for me. I'm able to speak to two legends of the ex-Jehovah's Witness movement. They are in fact mentioned in the book Crisis of Conscience by Raymond Franz. These are friends of the late Raymond Franz, who know firsthand what it's like to meet with the ugly side of Watchtower and the draconian treatment of so-called apostates. Without further ado, I guess I should introduce them. Nestor and Toni Kuilan, thank you so much for joining me.
It's a pleasure.
How are you doing? It's a really pleasure to be here talking with you. Definitely.
I'm kicking myself for not making this happen sooner, but I'm just glad it's happening now. Thanks to the wonders of the internet, you're joining me all the way over there in, I'm assuming, Puerto Rico.
Yes.
Wow. So, yeah, I've obviously hinted to my viewers who are perhaps less familiar with your story, because lots of people will know about Raymond Franz and Crisis of Conscience, and I'm sure you get that a lot, that connection. But what I'm really interested in knowing more about is your background and what brought you to Bethel and what your experiences were like in Bethel. So I don't know who wants to go first, but how did you wind up in the Jehovah's Witness religion?
Okay, let's start with the lady.
I was invited to a baseball game at Yankee Stadium in New York. And when I got there, it was not a baseball game. It was one of the big assemblies, maybe one of the biggest of its kind at that time, of Jehovah's Witnesses. And all I did was pray to God to forgive me for being there. But strangely enough, by the time everything finished, they asked for volunteers, and I told my cousin, let's go help. And we did. We went to wash dishes. And everyone kept asking me, sister, what congregation are you from? And I would say 14 Holy Martyrs. And they would look at me kind of strange. And so the whole thing evolved into a Bible study. And but a month or so later, I was going to meetings, and 6 months later, I was baptized.
So there must have been something, Toni, that, I mean, obviously, it sounds like you were swept along, perhaps, with the euphoria of the event to some extent, but there must have been something about the teachings that attracted you.
It wasn't so much the teachings. It was the love that I saw among the friends, and the fact that I was so naive with the Bible, because I was religious. I wanted to be a nun, and I was going to Catholic schools, but I thought I knew it all as far as religion was concerned. And then I found myself very dumb with the Bible. I had no idea. And now all of this, anything they would tell me, I would accept because they would show it to me in the Catholic Bible. And of course, being that I didn't know much about the Bible, well, then it was okay for me. And that convinced me. And then the loving association of the brothers and sisters, I said, I think I like this place. And I started going, and I kept going. Even though my parents at first didn't want me to go, but they didn't oppose too much.
Okay, and so what happened next? Were you, to what extent were you involved in perhaps recruiting new members?
I meant to say maybe there was one teaching that shocked me a lot and maybe moved me a lot, was the Armageddon coming.
Right.
It was so close. It was so close in 1958, and I didn't want to be destroyed. So I would say that moved me, yes.
Yeah, you had, was it in 1958 they had the Paradise Lost book with the very vivid illustrations of the ground opening up and swallowing people? Mm-hmm. So probably that might have factored into your thinking to some extent.
Yes, yes. And I was in high school then. I was going into my senior year. So I finished my senior year, and in the meantime, I did go house to house and went to the meetings. And but by the time I finished high school, I knew I wanted to pioneer. So that's what I did. I finished and went right into pioneering in New York. And that was in 58, that was in 59, 1960. Oh, by that time I had started studying with my parents. And I gave them over to the Spanish congregation because although I speak both languages, at that time my Spanish was not so fluent or so well. So then I thought it would be better if they went with a Spanish congregation, and they didn't. 6 months later, they got baptized also. And my father was a non-believer. He didn't even believe, he did not believe in God, the Bible, or anything. And yet in 6 months, he was in too.
From being opposed to you joining, that's quite some U-turn, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
And at some point, a knight in shining armor arrives on the scene.
Well, in 1960, my parents decided they're going back to Puerto Rico, and they did. And a couple of months later, I joined them as a special pioneer in another town. And I special pioneered there, and there was an assembly. And my mother asked me to come down to visit with them and go to their assembly. My mother had met Nestor because he was in the same congregation with her. But I'll let him tell you that story. And
always get in with the in-laws. Nestor knew that trick very well by the sounds of things.
They fell in love with him before I did.
Oh, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. So, Nestor, well, let's backtrack a little bit. Nestor, how did you get involved with Jehovah's Witnesses?
I was in the university at that time when I contacted the witnesses, and I was studying psychology. And at that exact time, we were studying, I was taking a course in different psychological theories. And my cousin, that was a witness, and I made friendship with his girlfriend at that time. He was one of my heroes that time. So I went with him to visit his mother-in-law. Wow, and they attacked me. They started talking and talking and talking. And okay, I asked a lot of questions, very interesting. And the idea was about how the kingdom of God is going to solve the social problems. I was very interested in the Puerto Rican political situation. It's a commonwealth, it's a colony really. Puerto Rico is a colony, belongs to the US, and I was really interested in those problems. And what they spoke, well, the way God is going to improve the condition, attracted me. But they gave me a magazine, an Awake magazine, and it was about psychological theories. Wow, and they were so succinct, really brief and to the point, and I like that. So I started reading and reading, and the next is, without realizing it, I was attending the meetings, and then from house to house, and then I got baptized in 1961.
Right.
Yeah. And I quit the university because I wanted to be a pioneer.
Okay, and
you were 6 months away from graduating.
Yes, I was 6 months away. So in that second assembly, I saw Toni. And boy, I attacked.
Oh, good grief. So you ingratiated yourself with Toni's parents as well, by the sounds of things, making...
Yeah. Toni's mother was really my friend.
Right.
Before we met her, she was really good with me. I used to visit them, and so she introduced Toni to me.
And then they wanted you to help my brother, who was studying at the university also. So Nestor used to visit with him, but they didn't talk much about the Bible.
No, he was in Latin jazz and jazz music that I love. So we made a good connection through the music until the day he died. We became brothers, really good friendship. So the whole family was crazy about me. And I was crazy about them also.
And so, you know, presumably you guys formed a relationship. I'm interested in knowing how you go from being out there in Puerto Rico to being in Brooklyn. So
Good.
Talk me through that transition.
Yeah. When we got married in 1964, we started a special pioneer together. She was a special pioneer already. So we got interested in continuing.
And just to be clear, for those who don't understand what special pioneering is, how many hours were you doing as special pioneers?
150 hours.
150 hours per month.
At that time, 150 hours, and I was the congregation servant, as they call it at that time, the overseer. And with many problems, it was really hard.
Right.
I used to receive $32, it was?
$32.50.
$32.50 at that time.
$32.50 each did you receive? Right. So you received $65 a month as a couple for doing both 150 hours of preaching as special pioneers.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way, I was a congregation servant before Nestor was.
Wow. There's a story there, I'm sure.
So when I was special pioneering, it was, new territory. There was nobody there. So I was the only serving.
But did you wear a head covering, sister?
Yes.
You
yes,
did.
Yeah. That was another point. I used to start helping them. So I started going there and seeing her and, But we applied for Gilead.
Right.
So we were invited to Gilead in 1967. And we went to Brooklyn, Bethel, to Gilead. And we spent there 5 months. Then later on, they gave me training in the circuit there in New York and sent us to Spain. When I went to Gilead, there was something interesting. They formed a group of 25 people or 20, and we were included in that group, studying all the administration of the watchtower. So we were able to work in the branch or the circuit or district. So we went to Spain as missionaries in October 1967. And we spent 10 years there. At the beginning, I was sent to Madrid. I was circuit overseer half of Madrid, and then what they used to call all Castilla and the West. And later on, I was appointed as a district overseer. And it was very hard at that time because it was during the Franco regime. And at that time, there was no liberty. The Catholic Church was the only religion. So we were working on the ground, and we were foreigners, so we have to be very careful. We used to make all the meetings on the ground, all the assemblies, everything. Everything was on the ground. The branch was split in 4 houses, in different activities in different homes. See, the accounts in one place, the service department in another place, the literature in another place. So if they get caught by the police, they wouldn't take everything. It was hard.
How did you interpret the fact that the Franco regime were essentially oppressing Jehovah's Witnesses, or your work was banned? Did that feature into your thinking for what was expected from Satan's system of things as the end approached? Did you feel as though this might be evidence of the fact that you were part of God's special religion?
Well, in Spain, excuse me, we used to speak about the persecution. We were persecuted, but in a way, the government was lenient with us. It wasn't like in Russia or in other places. They were quite lenient, but we have to do everything like if they were against us.
Yeah, they never caught us, so
No.
we really don't know if what they would have done, but except put us out of the country.
Yeah, we always take a precaution, and yes, you're under that brain washing system that you think yourself was
Europe.
suffering the persecution, especially in our case that we were used to a free country, how they do the work. For example, in Puerto Rico or the U.S., and suddenly going there, it was so hard, difficulties. If I get to explain you the whole way we used to do things, it was really a lot of work, an extra work.
The conditions of the country itself are also hard because they were backward at that time. A lot of things that we took for granted, like hot water,
Yeah.
and lots of things. And it was difficult, but we managed. We were happy in spite of it. We were happy.
Many of the witnesses were poor. So we have to stay in places that sometimes we didn't fit in the bed. That's good. At that time, we were really in good shape.
Indeed.
The same bed, but many times it was really hard. And I didn't have a car at that time. We used to take the bus and the train to travel.
So 10 years in Spain, working under ban, although, as you mentioned, it was fairly lenient. And presumably this went down well back in Brooklyn.
Okay. We, as I mentioned before, we did all kinds of things. I used to be in the circuit, then in the district. Then I was appointed to conduct a school with the elders, the Kingdom Military School.
Yeah.
I conducted for 4 years. And then I went to work in the branch in the service department. And working there, I was invited to work in the Spanish department in New York.
As a translator?
As a translator.
Right.
So we went there, and then I was working as a translator, and Tony was a proofreader for the Spanish literature. So we were 4 translators. The one in charge and myself, we were working with the Watchtower, and 2 others with the Awake magazine. And then the books and everything, it was split between the 4 of us. It was a lot of work.
I can imagine, because nowadays, I do know a little bit about translation, and obviously nowadays you have the benefit of the internet and word processors and that kind of thing. And I would imagine back in the 1970s, you're talking typewriters, you're talking dictionaries and lexicons and notepads and doing things old school. Yeah.
And always with pressure.
Right.
At the time of the closing to assemblies, yeah. But we consider it was a privilege, especially when we returned to Brooklyn, that we were regular Bethelite, is that when we started seeing really what was the organization. When we went to Brooklyn, New York.
And what year was it that you went to Brooklyn?
1977.
Okay. So this is 1977 was, I think, the year that Nathan Knorr died.
He had already died.
Yeah, he had already recently died.
Yeah. So, but you mentioned that you'd been through Gilead before then. So I'm just interested to know whether you have any personal stories about Nathan Knorr, because he's a character that we don't know all that much about, and I tried to write about him a bit in my book, and you guys were very kind to share some stories. So I'm just interested, for the benefit of viewers, what were your recollections of Nathan Knorr?
I can tell you some stories.
Yes.
He was really a charismatic guy. He was a leader. He impressed you. If you was walking in the hallways and he passed by, you have to look at him. He was tall, and his personality, he was a bully, 100%. For example, in Gilead, he used to give give us many talks. And one day he said, "You are the cream of the human society," just like that. You are the cream of the human society, because you were willing. I mean, talking to the whole class. All of you were willing to come here to go and serve with Jehovah's organization, this and this. So wow. Then he would say, "But if you do something wrong, I will take care of each one of you personally."
Wow.
He telling what he has done to other and other, and that was his personality. And then I saw him when we used to go to the daily text. He was there when I was in Spain as missionary. For example, I will tell you a story. He went to Spain as a zone overseer, and everybody was really nervous. The branch overseer was really nervous with him. And I remember being in his table, and one afternoon I moved. I went to another one because it was not comfortable. He was looking to everything. But when the visit finished, the branch overseer told me that he went to take him to the airport on Saturday afternoon. At noon. And he was nervous because he was late, traffic, and the branch overseer said, "Don't worry, I know the city and we're going to get there on time." But then suddenly there was a little congestion, and he started getting angry. And suddenly, once that he stopped, he opened the door and he get out and he kept walking.
Nathan Noel got out of the car.
Yeah, angry. You can imagine John Kerr was really nervous and said, "Please get in. This is going to pass, and we are going to be there on time." And that's good that they got there on time. He said, I don't know what is going to happen now, but nothing happened. But that was him.
Right.
He got angry.
So would it be fair to say he had a short temper?
Oh,
Very short.
oh.
Right.
Because he believed that he was the representative of Jesus Christ on earth. He was convinced of that. I remember once in Gilead, I don't remember now, but he was one of the oldest alive in Bethel at that time. He was from Rutherford time, and he was giving us a talk. And he said, he asked the question, "Do you know who is the closest person to Jesus Christ on earth today?" We didn't know. And he said, "Nathan H. Noel."
Wow.
And I remember that I was shocked. I thought, but Jesus Christ was, the how do you call it, the idea, the stereotype of Jesus Christ was a nice person, a nice guy, gentle. But when he compared him to Nathan Noel, I was shocked. But that was the idea that existed there, and he believed it. So?
And so did Fred Franz.
Yeah. For example, when he used to visit the missionaries, it was terrible for them. He never visited me because I was in the field. When he went there, I was working in Bethel, in the district. But he used to go to the missionary homes, and he would check the top of the doors to see if they were clean and things like that.
Oh, so he'd open the door and he'd run his finger along the top to see if there's any dust there. Wow.
Sometimes he would do something.
Military type.
So everybody was never, you never knew what he was going to do.
Gosh.
It's funny that, in the Jehovah Witness, they were anti-military, but yet they exalted and they made it very big that this was like in the military.
Right.
Like even making a bed, you had to stretch the bottom sheet, and they always said if you throw a dime, it'll bounce, just like in the military and things like that. And they would always keep saying that, and you always felt like you were a soldier.
How bizarre. Yeah.
There was once a Latin guy, he was from Puerto Rico. He was a little wild, and one day he did something in the congregation. I think he went to a party, and they sent complained about him. So the next morning, during the daily text, he called him, said, come here. So he put him to walk in a place, walked in the runway,
In the
cafeteria, and started talking to him. And saying bad things about him so that everybody could see him. You know, things like that.
So how did you reconcile this kind of bullying behavior with the fact that you were both so well embedded in this organization and you had to effectively represent the organization in the work you were doing as missionaries? How were you able to reconcile this bad behavior by the leadership?
Well, that's what now they call cognitive dissonance.
Sure. Yeah.
The only explanation.
You were able to come up with excuses.
Yeah, because for example, in our case, I used to really make emphasis in loving kindness and things like that. That was my favorite subject. And you knew that no matter what people will do, the branch will president. And there I was talking to be nice with others, be gentle, things like that. I would say that I mentioned in my book that I always kept a little bit of independence to be myself, to show my real personality.
Mm.
And I was kind. But I remember when I used to go to Bethel in Brooklyn, when I was in the circuit and in the district vacation meetings in Brooklyn, New York, that I used to talk with other circuit overseers of district, how sharp they were. Really sharp. You know that.
Absolutely.
I was not like that. But it was hard to reconcile it. And
I can imagine, yeah. Another thing I wanted to ask was, I was obviously born in the governing body era, so the governing body more or less started around 1971, and it was in 1975 that there was obviously the power grab and they consolidated their authority. And I was born in 1979, by which point the governing body arrangement was up and running, and I've only ever known a governing body. And it strikes me that whenever Watchtower refers back to its history, even from before the governing body era, they will refer to the leadership as though there was a governing body. So they will say things like the governing body of that time directed this, the governing body of that time directed that. As a couple who were in the organization in quite high-ranking positions long before the governing body arrangement started, are you able to confirm whether there was, in fact, a governing body arrangement before 1971?
No. That's a very, very good point. A good point that you cannot really understand. For example, in Puerto Rico, there were, I think when I was there here, we were pioneers, there were about 3 or 2 old ladies who belonged to the remnant.
Oh, missionaries.
They were missionaries that they were anointed bona fides. One of them was the wife of Shell. I think it was his last name. Snell, that he was he rebelled against the Watchtower and he wrote several books.
Oh, right, okay. Is it William Schnell who wrote 30 Years a Watchtower Slave?
That's
His
it.
wife was in Puerto Rico as a missionary.
Oh, okay, yeah.
A very hard woman. And then there was another one who was very sweet. They were of the remnant. They were members of the remnant, but they were doing nothing. And you would think, but how come you read that the remnant is the one giving the spiritual food at due time and they are doing nothing? They are getting food like me. But then you learn that there was they used to call it, there were 7 members. There was Noor, Henschel, and a few others that formed.
And this is the Watchtower Board of Directors.
The board of directors.
Yeah.
More
Suitor.
control of the organization. But really, really, the power was Nor and Fred Franz.
Right.
That was all. That was all. Fred Franz will write something, and Nor will put it in action. It was a really good mix. That was really the power.
So you were actually at that time,
yeah,
when you weren't thinking of a governing body in Brooklyn, you were thinking of Nathan Knorr and Fred Franz.
Yeah.
Would that be fair? Right.
And for example, when I went to translate, even at that time, whatever had the signature of FF, watch out with that.
Don't question it.
Because if it was from another writer, you might send a question or something like that. What about this or this point? But it was FF.
So when you were translating in Brooklyn and the transcript came through and it had Fred Franz's initials on, you knew that the writing itself couldn't be questioned.
Yeah, especially the English proofreader, because we got the material already from the press. Then
right.
We worked, but to polish it, be careful. And yeah, that was the idea. There were two of them. It was a good team.
And what was Fred Franz like? Because I always imagine him as a slightly eccentric character.
Oh, he was a character.
Right.
You hear the stories. You hear the story, but let me tell you something that
if you really talk to his shoes, that's one rumor that I heard.
The way he dressed, the way he walked, the actions during the daily text when he was the conductor, he was really funny. But close to my fellowshipping, I used to visit the house of a girl, a woman, who used to go to Spain a lot. She was after the branch servant, and we made a good friendship.
We were his chaperones.
Yeah. He was scared. So we made a really good friendship. And when we went to Brooklyn, she gave us the key of her home. She used to live close to her apartment, close to Bethel office. And he was a good friend of Nathan Knorr and all the big shop. He was in. And she was really, really nice with us. And my congregation was close to her house. In that congregation was Henshaw, Milton Henshaw, was in that congregation, and Freddie Franz.
But we never saw them there.
Now that they have when I was there, came this Philip Bromley, that now is a lawyer.
Oh, Phil Bromley was in that congregation, was he?
He was in our congregation. He speaks Spanish.
Wow. I didn't know Phil Bromley speaks Spanish. That's interesting. Yeah.
And well, he was young when I was there. That was in 1977. Young, and I remember one Thursday, she called us, Mary Kendall. She said, Nestor, Tony, come tonight. We're going to have a meeting with some branch overseers that are coming to the society to have some training. Come here. So we went there, and there was Freddie Franz. So, hi, how are you doing? Good. When they were going to eat, he called us. I mean, the lady said, Nestor, sit close to Brother Franz. I was scared. It was scared, but I obeyed. I said, he was in the head, and I sat close to him. And suddenly, he raised his head. He was drinking wine, really a lot of wine. I was shocked how he can take it, but he was an old man. And suddenly, his typical way of talking, he said, well, I understand that you're a friend of my nephew, Raymond Franz, huh? My stomach. And I understand that you get together. Huh? You're good friends, huh? I said, well, I know him for many years. He was a branch overseer in Puerto Rico, and then when I came to Gilead, when he used to visit Spain as a branch overseer, son overseer, yeah, we know each other. I said, and then you like to talk, huh? I said, boy, this is getting out of control. I think he was sending me a message. And he kept saying funny things like he used to do it, like, the way he used to talk.
Do you think he was trying to intimidate you by inferring that he knew he had lots of information on you? Was that what he was doing?
And it was a fact.
Yeah.
In fact, the whole governing body was directing the whole thing.
Right.
He was on the ball.
They all knew. We were the ones that didn't know that they knew.
So you've mentioned obviously that you were friends with Raymond Franz. That much is clear from Crisis of Conscience. So you mentioned that you knew Raymond. You met Raymond even earlier than going to Brooklyn, from when he was going to Puerto Rico. I think was he the branch in Puerto Rico? You said.
Yeah, he was branch overseer, and he was very kind.
How would you sum up your friendship with Raymond Franz?
Well, I wouldn't consider myself a close friend.
Right.
I mean, we knew each other, and we always would say a few things. And for example, once I was going to buy a camera, and I called him to give me some ideas. He asked me twice to substitute him in giving 2 talks. One was in Texas,
and one in California.
Another to attend a congregation in Florida for the last memorial that we participated.
So you stood in for him to give talks in Spanish? Yeah.
Oh yes, he was fluent in Spanish.
And we see each other, we say hello, how are you doing, and this, he was always very kind.
He was a quiet person, not a party goer. I mean, definitely. But if you needed something, he was there and he would listen to you.
He was quiet. I remember I think it was when I went to Gilead. I was working in the kitchen. And you have to get the plates and refill them and bring them back. And I noticed that he was looking at me when I came, but I wasn't sure which one lived in his table. He said, come here. So he said, this is from here, and this other one is from that table. Well, I was relieved. He was like that.
Okay. He was personable with you. He wasn't aloof or anything like that. And so you arrive in Brooklyn in 1977, and by 1980 you're being disfellowshipped as apostates. Things seem to escalate very quickly. So how on earth did that happen?
We were not happy at Bethel, and we were going to leave. As a matter of fact, we had already turned in our letter that we were leaving Bethel because it was really getting to us. What
was getting to you specifically, Toni?
My working conditions were terrible. I had a person working next to me that made my life miserable. And I guess she must have been that she had nervous problems, but I couldn't even take a break with the other girls because I would come back and have a little note that I was away 5 minutes and that's being on Jehovah. Yeah, if people would break for coffee or whatever, she didn't want me to do it. And I was getting a little upset, not just because of that, but I also had another problem with doing proofreading. I needed light, and she got natural light from behind where she was sitting from the window, but there was a division between us, so I didn't get that light. I needed the electric light. She would come and just shut it off, and because you shouldn't spend too much money. It's Jehovah. You're cheating on Jehovah.
How are you supposed to read with no light?
Yeah. So I spoke with the overseer, and he just told me not to pay attention to her, but it was affecting me. And finally, I had to. I went to another overseer of the floor, and he came over and he got me a lamp looks something like your mic that you can see. And, so that was just a physical problem. But the other things that we saw at Bethel, we did not like. And we said, this is not for us. We're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
We didn't say we were leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, but we were leaving Bethel. And like I said, we had already turned in our papers that we wanted to leave. And we had some stuff that was being sent to Puerto Rico from Bethel. So it was just like a week or two before the expulsion.
All right. So you'd already made your minds up, and then just by coincidence, you get caught up in this massive purge of apostates.
Yeah, this is what happened. When we got there, many Spanish-speaking young people used to come to me to the table, because they were suffering because the mature ones, the overseers, want them to act like a 70 years old man. That's the typical of the mature person, and things like that. And they used to come to me, I used to talk to them about salsa and dancing and things like that, joke with them, and they were happy, so they used to keep telling me things, and the problems in the factory. So I started developing the idea that the Holy Spirit is not in this place. Because the fact that we have a name, we used to be missionaries during the Franco regime, and we were mature, supposedly, people used to tell us stories. And many women used to talk to Tony, wife of the governing member, governing body members, used to talk to Tony. Mr. Klein, he was a drunkard. I don't know if you know about that.
I did hear about that, yeah.
Yeah, he was, and he was a crazy guy. He was really.
There's a very strong drinking culture in Bethel, which we're learning extends right up to the modern governing body. So, yeah.
Klein and I were neighbors. We used to live in a very privileged place. Because of seniority, we got a very nice room with a very nice view, and he was our neighbor. And his wife used to come to our room to see the news, because he didn't allow her to see TV in the room. Well, I saw so many things that one day I started talking with Cristobal Sanchez, the other translator. It was Fabio Silva, Cristobal Sanchez. He was there for years in Bethel, translating, a very good guy from Cuba. One day I said, Cristobal, I am getting to the conclusion that in this place, there is no Holy Spirit. And I used to say that in Spain, I was like in a paradise, because I was controlling my life. I was the secret overseer, the district overseer, the conductor of the school. See, I developed the pace, the spirituality. But now here, I was another soldier, just working and working and working. And he said, well, if you see it like that, maybe not so strong, but there are problems. And from time to time, we used to talk. But now, we get to 1977. One day I said, we are leaving.
Almost 1980.
We are leaving. Tony.
Sorry, you said 1977. Did you mean 79 or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 79.
Yeah.
Really 1980. Because we left May or
April.
April.
Yeah. I said, Tony is.
A couple of weeks before.
And then he said, well, Nestor, things are really getting rough. You should speak with Rene Vasquez. Rene Vasquez was another guy from Puerto Rico that used to be a missionary in Spain. And he was very close to Harley Miller in the service department, and to Raymond Franz. He used to work for himself, and he used to do a lot of good things for them, and also he used to come once a week to help in the translation department. So I just called Rene and asked him. I said, well, Nestor, there is a lot of things that I have to talk to you. I was talking with Raymond Franz, and he told me, that the interpretation of the 144,000 is not correct. Oh, really? So what's the idea? He said, no, there's only one class, not two classes. All Christians are members of the body of Christ. I said, no, that's interesting. Okay, I will call Ray.
So basically, Raymond Franz did have sort of errant ideas that could be considered apostate, but these were things that were being shared in kind of private conversations. So everything was almost underground, it sounds like.
So several people knew about those ideas, but they kept them just like knowledge. That was all.
Yeah.
In my case, I said, well, this is not, can be. If this is true, then what are we doing here? I called Raymond, and Raymond gave me some ideas, and he said, Nestor, tonight, before you go to sleep, just read chapter, I think it was chapter 8 of Romans. Read it and try to just read it. Don't think about the ideas of the watchtower or others. Just see the message it gives to you. See if it talks to you and is directed to everybody, not just to a few people. I did it. I said, well, it can be. Yeah, it's true. So I called him again the next day. I think, I said, Raymond, we have to talk. And then I talked with him, and he came to our room. We have a nice dinner, no?
That was the famous day that everybody talks about. We had steaks and wine. Wow.
They knew it. The governing body knew about that.
Everybody knew at Bethel what we had.
And that was scandalous, was it?
That was a scandal, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, they knew the whole thing. But and I also spoke with Dunlap. Oh, the thing, you know who is Dunlap, no? He's
Ed Dunlap.
Ed Dunlap.
Oh, Ed Dunlap, yeah.
He was an intellectual.
Mm.
And he used to give us talks in Gilead. And he's the one that wrote James' book that they retired. And
They retired him and the book.
I remember in Spain they used to do that. During the
What was it about the James book? Because I obviously knew that the James book was a bit dodgy, kind of growing up as a JW. It wasn't really something we were supposed to read. But what precisely was it about the James book that was so heretical and dangerous for witnesses?
Oh, it was a beautiful book. It was James, the letter of James explained, verse by verse. I was explained in a very loving way. He didn't attack the watchtower, but the approach was different than that of them.
So just because he didn't weave in enough watchtower doctrine, you think? It was just purely focused on the Bible?
But I remember, I don't remember any point. It might be included there, some ideas.
Yeah,
But I don't remember anything.
There's nothing specifically that was wrong in it.
It was the prose, the beautiful. It was a book that you will enjoy reading.
Yeah.
But then, when I spoke with Raymond Franz, at that time we had written already to the Brooklyn Bethel office that we were living in. So we went to Puerto Rico on vacation first. And I took with me the Bible that we use in Gilead. It was a big letters with many marks, and I took it to study, to review. And I used to speak with Tony at night. During the day we were with my sister and friends. And then I decided that, no, this is not God's organization. It has nothing to do with God. And I talked to Tony, and Tony said the same thing. So I said, then when we return, immediately we're going to leave.
Were you nervous talking to Tony about it? Because that's quite a big thing, quite a big conversation for a couple to have, that, oh, actually, I don't believe this religion anymore. Was that nerve-wracking for you?
Not really, because he was ready for that.
Tony, were you shocked when you heard Nestor say this?
No. I said, wow, that, and I said, then he told me the same thing. You read it, see what you see. And then I said, yeah, you're right. I saw it right away.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was anxious to leave Bethel. I wasn't anxious to leave Jehovah's Witnesses at that point until I saw this. Yeah.
Right.
The point is that when I saw this point, because I always thought that was the key point to keep you under the control, to believe that there is the street slave, the governing body, then he has an organization, the organization, and but when I realized that was like that, I didn't look for other doctrines.
Yeah.
So Raymond Franz's heresy was going around telling people to read Romans chapter 8, and that apparently was waking everyone up. That's what I'm hearing.
But
many didn't believe.
We weren't conscious of what was going on at Bethel at that time. Now that with the book, Nestor asked a good friend that worked there. She's also was a proofreader, right? She's also was a proofreader, and she'd been at Bethel 10 years. At that time, it was about her 10th year because the following year she left. Then I realized from what she said, now that I'm reading this, what was going on when we saw it. When we saw it, a lot of things had been going on at Bethel. They were reading the Bible between themselves. They were questioning the governing body. They were questioning a lot of things. And we were very naive to that. We just saw this one point, and this is our way out.
Right.
Yeah, they kept talking and looking for more. I didn't study any more doctrines. This is not good, it's not good. Enough is enough.
Sure.
And so that's what they call us.
What amazes me, I'm a little bit sketchy because I've not researched it, to be honest, for a while. I really looked into it closely when I was writing my book, but it all began with a phone call. And, Bethel receiving a phone call saying that they'd heard some heretical things said by a Bethelite. And this prompted all of these basically interrogations, and there were committees formed going round to interrogate people in their offices and that kind of thing.
In England?
No, in Brooklyn. When the purge was going on, that is.
Yeah.
What was it like in that atmosphere when the governing body were convinced that there was this great apostate threat that needed to be dealt with? Was it scary to think that you'd already decided you wanted to leave, but presumably you wanted to do it on your own terms. So was it stressful to think that they might be coming for you?
I think we were the point, no? Before we were the fellowship, everything was quiet and not too strong.
It's very much underground.
Yeah, but
so it happened by surprise.
When they started to interview me, I remember many people in the hallways. They will look at me and they would say, "Watch out," things like that. So I knew that something was going on. And I remember that guy Cyril.
Yes,
he's still there. I said, Nestor, what, are you crazy? Where are you going?
Yeah. Look how old you are now. We were 40 then.
40 years old. I said, where are you going? I said, don't worry about that.
You'll never find a job. You don't have a home. You don't have anything. You have everything here. So stay here.
And the other one that was in the Bethel office that used to be in Spain, and we made good friendship when I was the district overseer there. He said, Nestor, watch out, watch out. So we knew that something was moving around. And the point is that Cristóbal Sanchez, has mentioned it to others. And René Vázquez has been spreading it. It's not me. And so they were already...
But your name got linked with it because you were part of what you assumed were private conversations, and your name got included.
Yeah.
We were the right bait at the right time.
Right.
That's what it was for them, yes. Because we were unaware of everything that was going around. It just happened so fast.
Well, neither them, neither Cristobal, neither Rene, they didn't know.
No, but they had been talking to others about it. We just learned it, and 2 weeks later, we were out.
Yeah, they were preaching, telling others.
Yeah.
And these other people immediately called service department to be saved, no? To be, hey, I don't have anything to do with that. And what they were looking was not for us, but Raymond.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what
They wanted him.
You were just a means to get to Raymond Franz.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I remember that they disfellowship me on a Friday. Thursday night, it was really heavy on me. I was really tired, sick, because the pressure was terrible. And
Well, you didn't say 5 consecutive days
yeah,
of interviews.
and I called Raymond. He was on vacation. During that time, Raymond was not in Brooklyn. He was out on vacation. And Raymond told me, Nestor, tell them whatever they want to know. Don't take that just for you. I said, no, I can't. That's my personality doesn't allow me. I mean, my dignity, my sense of dignity, I'm not going to start talking to you. I have been telling them, if you want to know what he believes, talk to him. But I don't want to do it. And he said, but no, to tell them. I said, no. I just want you to know that this is getting really, really rough.
So just to be clear, Tony, did you say that Nestor had 5 straight days of questioning?
I only had 1.
You had 1 and Nestor had 5.
Yeah.
And to what extent was the questioning to do with Raymond Franz?
Almost the whole thing.
Almost the whole thing.
What did he tell us?
See?
What were we believing?
Right.
Interesting. They never asked me what I believe or nothing because I never spoke anything.
Right.
They asked me about them.
Amazing.
I mean, about Ray.
What did he tell you? We know you spoke because you ate steaks and wine in your room. Everybody knew the story.
And Raymond Franz had called back because he was on leave, I think. And
At that time he was on
He was
vacation.
on vacation.
yeah, and he called, I think, Albert Schroeder because he'd heard that the purge was underway and wanted answers from Schroeder as to what was going on. And Schroeder fobbed him off with some excuse about, oh, there's just lots of pressure. We want to make sure we get the book out on time or something like that. And didn't mention anything about the fact that people like you were being interrogated as to what you knew about him. That's amazing.
In the committee was Dan Sidlick. And when I was in Gilead, I was in his congregation. I mean, he knew me. And he was there just like nothing because the questioning was not by others. And it was like a Gestapo. The second day, when they called Cristobal Sanchez, the second day he said, I don't want my wife to return. And he told me, he said, that's good. So I mentioned, I don't want Tony to be here, too much for her. So they said, okay, you come by yourself. And they used to come, we were working there, and they used to come. But
what's interesting is that they disfellowshipped Norma and
Cristobal.
They disfellowshipped Nestor Kuilan, but they didn't disfellowship me.
Right.
I am not disfellowshipped, by the way.
Oh, that's interesting. Interesting. I had no idea. I assumed you'd both been disfellowshipped in the purge, but it was just Nestor.
I have not been disfellowshipped. I've never received any notice, or they didn't say anything at that time.
Let me tell you something very interesting. When they gave me the letter of this fellowship, it was Friday afternoon, Friday.
Yeah.
And they gave me the letter that you are the fellowship. I took the letter and said, well, okay. Then he said, if you want to appeal, you have to appeal tonight. You don't have time. So when I saw the letter, it was by the governing body. The governing body signed the letter of the fellowshipping. So the governing body is fellowshipping.
Tell me you've still got that letter, Nestor.
No.
Have you still got it?
I wrote a
We got
letter.
rid of everything.
I
You
wrote
got
a
rid
letter.
of it. Oh, piece
Well,
of history there.
I
Piece
wrote
of
a letter.
history.
Yeah, it's a shame. I wrote a letter and sent it to them. I mean, I think it went to the entrance and put it there. That's Friday afternoon. That night is the night that Tony went to Diane's Beer's room and they cried. And so later on, she came to the room and we decided to celebrate in Greenwich Village. Cristobal, Norma, and the two of us. We want to celebrate our fellowship
In Greenwich Village.
When we returned, there was a friend from Spain who was in New York those days. And he said, Nestor, I heard he was this fellowship. How come? I said, yes, this fellowship, me. And
No, you didn't know then, remember? Because he was going to tell you if they
announced it.
Ah, okay, that's right. That's right.
And he said, okay, if they mention that in the morning, I bring you a note. So the next morning, we wake up, but I didn't go downstairs. If I get to go downstairs, I have to hear the announcement of our fellowship. So he came early and threw a note. He said,
The writing on the wall,
Yeah,
something
he said-
like that.
remember those words?
Many tekel passing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The idea was that it was done.
Yeah.
So later on, John Booth, a member of the governing body, came, but really nervous. Said, come in, please, come in. No.
He was very old.
I have that letter for you. When I read the letter, said, you have been disfellowshipped by the governing body for covering over an apostasy movement. If you ever want to return, you have to write directly to the governing body, not to any congregation.
It's not too late, Nestor.
That
You
was
can
my
always go
privilege.
back to Jehovah.
Yeah, they're all gone now.
That was my
Tony's
privilege.
still a JW by the sounds of things, so
So I don't know if any other human being has been disfellowshipped by the governing body. That was my.
come on, you should have kept that letter. That's
But the funny thing is that I thought, well, I am out. I don't want
Yeah.
anything to do with that.
yeah, you understandable. You weren't sentimental for that kind of thing. You just wanted to reclaim your life. Which and what was it like doing that? Having spent decades and decades, serving this organization, suddenly cast adrift. How did you guys, reclaim your life?
Well, that's that's something very interesting. Interesting from the point of view that there was something, another decision that we took right there. I remember telling Tony, I don't think, because originally we thought, let's get out and let's go to a congregation and fade out because of her parents. The parents were in the circuit, they were pioneer, and we didn't want to hurt them. So, but now I said, we are out, period. So I don't have anything to do with them, nothing. We are outside. So when I got to Puerto Rico, I remember I called some friends. I found them, friends from my infancy, from the school, and from the university. And the good thing is that all of them were there for us.
Yeah.
Immediately I contact them, good people, so we started making friendship, and we involved with our activities, looking for a job. We found a job, we go home, because we went to live with my sister and her husband. He is an elder and a pioneer, and she's a pioneer for years. And my father, but they were very good with us. Very good with us, and we never spoke about religion, nothing. Up to date, I haven't told them what happened.
They never asked.
I don't know what they think. I ask them, if you want to know, you ask me. If not, I don't press you.
Well, it's just such an alien world, isn't it, to outsiders? I would imagine if you haven't lived through it, or you've not spent at least some time as a Jehovah's Witness, it's very hard to get your head around what it's like to not be in control of your own thoughts for years and years. So, yeah.
So we started.
It's a mind control, a very strong mind control, but you don't notice it when you're there.
Sure.
I think it was my advantage. We made, for example, one particular friend. But I remember every time that we get together, Toni used to talk about Toni's problem was her parents.
Yeah.
Her parents. That they rejected us. They said, "You're dead. You are not my family anymore." I said, "Okay, no problem. We're not family." But in her case, she was the daughter. And that was hard for her. And that's the only time that we spoke about the witnesses.
Mm.
But since we didn't know anything about the witnesses, we never spoke about that organization. We had other friends talking about other things. See, they used to invite us to their home. We used to invite them to our home. And yeah, no.
Strangely enough, my first job in Puerto Rico was with an ex-Jehovah Witness who was also a friend of ours. But when he saw me, he was my boss. When he saw me, he didn't recognize me, and so went into his office and he said, "You're Nestor's wife, aren't you in Spain?" And I said, "No," and then I explained to him. And he said, "Oh," he says, I was almost not going to hire you because I don't want to hire Jehovah's Witness."
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but it's a shame. But for example, I was in the university when, and I quit for that. And we couldn't have, pudimos tener otra vida.
I was going to ask you actually, because it sounds like you managed to get yourselves back on your feet in terms of your social circle, which I think is probably the biggest thing, the biggest challenge for.
I returned to university. I finished my bachelor's degree. We got good. We worked always for ourselves. At the beginning, I worked in a company, but then I started with insurance and real estate, and we have been working for ourselves.
Fantastic. So you managed to get your education completed, and although you were originally working for other people, you ended up self-employed, and by the sounds of things, quite comfortable and not wanting for too much.
The moment we left Bethel, we decided we didn't want anything to do with our past. The only thing we did miss a lot, and it hurt, was Spain, because I got very much attached to the people in Spain. And to this day, I hear things about Spain and I want to do what they do and like they do it, but it doesn't work like that. But
no,
I do feel sorry that we couldn't go back to talk to them and explain anything. It wouldn't have done any different anyway, but it is what it is.
It is, and you can still claim those nice memories. They're your memories just as they are their memories, you know. When you look back on the whole thing, because this cult took decades out of your lives, or it had your loyalty, you could say, for decades. What would you say is your biggest regret from being involved with Jehovah's Witnesses?
Well, in my case, I left when my family really needed me, emotionally, not the financially. And I left them. And when my mother died, I was there. I was not able to be in her funeral.
Oh, really? You missed your mother's funeral?
Yeah.
We knew 2 weeks after she died that she had died because there was no communication in the town we were in Spain.
Yeah.
And so a friend had to drive 8 hours to the place where we were to tell us.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so things like that, I feel bad. But at the same time, I realized that I did a good job in Spain from the point of view of helping people individually. You know how the Spanish character is. so they
got to be careful here. I don't know offend any Spanish people, but go on.
They are strong. They are strong-headed, and I used to work with them. Be relaxed. Don't be like that. I remember one year, I gave several talks about imitating the personality of Jesus Christ, something that I gathered from different books, how he used to be. And I try to impress kindness, being good, sincere, things like that. So I feel good in that. I think I did a good with people.
Mm.
I never hurt anybody. I never offended.
You did the best with the hand you were dealt, basically,
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
Love her.
I would have liked to have continued studying because I had a scholarship to go into a university, but I gave it up. So for pioneering.
So would you say that's your biggest regret, Toni, giving up that scholarship?
Of course, because I never had it. I mean, I had it, but I didn't start studying. It didn't. I can't say I miss it. My biggest regret is that hurtful thing between my parents and myself. It wasn't easy. But
Oh, did they shun you?
My mother had to come live with us, and she died, and she was with us for 9 months. And she kept saying, if only I had known, if only I had known. And we would take her to the congregation. As a matter of fact, when she died, we cremated her and had a ceremony in the congregation in Puerto Rico and then in Orlando, because that's where my sister is. And we sat there in the Kingdom Hall, but she could see that it wasn't like she thought we were so worldly and so horrible, et cetera, et cetera.
So what did she mean when she said, if only I had known?
I think she had regretted the fact that she took part with my father in not communicating with us.
In shunning you, yeah.
She went to see the overseer, the branch overseer, and he asked her, do you have someone to take care of you? She said, no. He said, well, then you have no other choice. And then Nestor told her, isn't that great? You served Jehovah when you're strong, and now that you're weak, they send you with us. All these years you couldn't talk to us, and now it's okay.
How many years did your parents shun you, Toni?
30.
30 years, wow.
My father died in the meantime, yeah. But I would visit them like when they had their anniversary, or if anything big came, I would go. But it was always such a cold shoulder, but I was there, and that's what I wanted. I wanted them to see that I wasn't a witness, but I was still their daughter.
Mm.
Yeah. But it wasn't easy.
No, it's certainly not. Now, I'm mindful of your time, and yeah, I don't have too many questions left, but if I know my viewers, they're a very, very nosy bunch, especially when it comes to religious belief. And they're going to want me to ask you where you ended up on your own spiritual journey in terms of your faith and your religion. So where did you go after leaving Jehovah's Witnesses?
Well, right now, I have done.
Funny about that, Toni. Why are you laughing, Toni?
We became Buddhists for a while.
I was going to say, to make a long story short,
yeah.
We founded the first Buddhist temple in Puerto Rico.
As you do, that's just the obvious thing to do after leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, is to found a Buddhist temple. I can't believe I've not done it yet here in Croatia.
Well, finally, we are free.
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with religion.
No.
For me, all of them are the same.
Yeah.
I sometimes I feel like some people say, no, but this is not a cult. This is a religion, and they are all bad.
So you had a go with Buddhism, but that turned out more or less the same, did it?
Well, years ago, I quit. I said, no, I don't belong. I am nothing. But something that I have learned, that's my own. I have read different philosophies. I have read a lot of philosopher, Greek, and the only thing that I can follow is myself.
Yeah.
And be in a way pragmatic, no? Because how to live happily.
Yeah.
all those ideas about God, spiritual, you have no basis.
Mm.
No basis at all. This is just ideas, theories. So the only thing that I can be sure of, try to be a good person, be a good human being, try to be happy, help others, and that's my philosophy.
Although, if I ever need advice with setting up a Buddhist temple, I do know where to go. So hopefully you can steer me through that process.
And I go.
Nestor's father would always say, love God and your neighbor, and that is religion for me.
Yeah.
And he was a wonderful example of that.
Mm.
I could say to this day that he served as my mother and father when I didn't have them. And he would always tell me, be kind to them and love them. They love you even if they're in that religion. Mm-hmm.
Sure. And then another thing I was really curious about was when you guys left, you guys left in 1980, no internet, no Facebook, no Twitter, no YouTube. You had telephones and you had letters that you had to put a stamp on, and you had books. What's it like in the 21st century when it comes to the availability of information and the ease with which ex-witnesses can communicate with one another? Is that something that's kind of taken you by surprise at all?
I find it a little overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah.
And I try not to be so involved, because you have to take time for yourself and be you, and it's okay to know what others are doing or saying, but it's important that you can look at yourself and say, I want this and I want it this way.
Yeah, it's a little bit too much information, isn't it, at times, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Some of it a little bit exaggerated.
Sure. But was that also true? I'm interested to know, was that also true when you guys were leaving back in the 80s? Was there also this kind of element of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who were kind of exaggerating a bit and not afraid to kind of bend the truth a little bit?
how was that?
I didn't.
So arguably nowadays you have ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who are fastidious about things being true and about reporting on things accurately and factually. And you also have perhaps some ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who get a bit carried away and indulge in conspiracy theories and aren't afraid to kind of get the facts slightly wrong as long as they are attacking the organization. So was it a little bit like that in the 80s, or I'm just interested?
I don't know, because we just broke off, and believe
You didn't have any contact at all with ex-witnesses?
We weren't looking for it either.
No.
We just worried about what we had to do to make life good for us, and it worked great.
And when Crisis of Conscience came out, presumably you read that. You didn't even read Crisis of... Oh, good grief.
Partially.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something.
Have you read it yet? That's what I want to...
Not really.
No, wow.
Remember, well, you're young. You don't remember that. When I was young, there was the idea of the satellites, the countries. You remember the countries that were satellites of the Soviet Union?
Yeah.
Soviet Union came later. There was Russia satellite, and the countries that were aligned with them. And I remember saying to the governing body, said that, because at the moment they treat me really rough. I remember saying, hey, hold on. I am also an elder here in Bethel. You have to respect me. And they say something that I was going to become part of the
bad
slave. Remember?
So they predicted that you would become a big bad apostate, and you wanted to prove them wrong.
I said, don't worry about me.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. I am not going to be a satellite of you.
Yeah.
I am free.
I see.
And then that stayed with me, and I always try to be free, even till today. I don't want to be a slave of any philosophical movement or be dogmatic. I don't want to be dogmatic. I want to flow with life.
Sure.
And,
well, that's understandable.
For that reason, we never pay attention to that movement. I used to say, if I don't pay attention to the Pentecostal, to the Catholic, to the Mormon,
I envy you. I envy you. It must be wonderful.
Well, you know, when we look back,
Can I come over to Puerto Rico and just swap with you guys? You know.
Yes, certainly can. We'll go swimming with the whales.
The next John Cedars video will be hosted by Nestor, and I'm going to swap with you guys, I think. And I'm interested as well, did you, even if you weren't interested in what was going on with JWs, did you maintain your friendship with Raymond Franz?
When we left.
Yeah, so after you left, did you manage to keep in contact with Raymond?
What happened is, even when we were witnesses, we weren't like buddies.
No.
Speak maybe once, or if we crossed in the hallway or things like that, or if that time you needed a camera and you went to ask him, but it's not like we've met or we were close friends. So we left Bethel. We just left Bethel, and that was.
But
it.
I know he was really concerned about us.
Yes.
The concern comes across in the book. It sounds like he really cared about you guys. So but you're saying that maybe the friendship.
You know something? When he was writing, I told him not to mention me in the book.
Oh, really?
And he did it. And what he wrote is really touchy, you know, the way he spoke about us. And he speaks very well about me, the kind of person that I was. And this girl, Diane Beer, that made the story, is the one that wrote the preface of my book. As a matter of fact, it's going, I imagine it's going to be in Amazon now in May.
In May, so your book's due out in May.
In Spanish.
In Spanish.
In Spanish, it's not. It's so okay. So, so that I can prepare my viewers, what is the book called? What can they look out for?
Oh, the name is Finally Free.
Finally Free.
Finally Free: The Memoirs of Nestor Toni Kuilan. Finally free because I traveled different things. Until now, I consider myself really free. And it's a memoir. It's a beautiful book because what I did, my idea was to let the reader see what really is the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. Not telling them, but seeing our experience. Like when we used to Spain and what we used to do, the way the witnesses acted, how the control was there. All these things, they're going to be seen by reading the book. See?
I don't know how, but we knew that Ray had been disfellowshipped and that they gave him $10,000 to leave, and that was like his payment for all those years. A couple of years down the road, we heard.
I think they offered to make Raymond and Cynthia have some kind of special pioneer status that would have involved them receiving money, but they turned that down because I think he writes that when he left Bethel, he had their car and he had $600 or something like that. So, but listen, it's been fascinating hearing your recollections. There's been a few surprises in there as well, so thank you for that. And you've now got me thinking about moving to Puerto Rico and forgetting completely about the Jehovah's Witness religion.
Bring the girls.
Thank you for putting that idea in my head. But before I let you go completely, I have one question for both of you, and I want you both to answer. But I want Nestor to answer in Spanish for the benefit of my Spanish-speaking viewers, and then I want Tony to answer the same question in English. And the question is, what advice do you have for current and former Jehovah's Witnesses?
He wants you to speak in Spanish.
Well, ¿tú entiendes?
En español. But
Do you
he said
understand?
for his viewers.
Yeah, I know, but do you understand Spanish?
I don't understand Spanish, but I'm just hoping you're not going to embarrass me too much.
Okay. La idea mía,
I can edit this, by the way.
la idea mía, mi enfoque en la vida es el siguiente. Fuimos miembros de un culto, en español de una secta, y logramos salir, ver lo que había. Pues ahora tenemos que buscar la libertad, ser libres. Y para ser libres tenemos que buscar dentro de nosotros sencillamente las respuestas a la vida, ser libres. Y generalmente salimos y buscamos otras organizaciones, pues estamos acostumbrados a la muleta. Tenemos que aprender a romper todo eso y liberarnos. Y entonces seremos felices, seremos buenos seres humanos, sin necesidad de que nos digan qué hacer. Esto es bien difícil, atreverse a ser uno. Eso es vital. Atreverse a ser quien uno es. Tú eres un buen ejemplo de eso. Lloyd es un buen ejemplo de que hace lo que a él le da la gana. Él lo hace, quiere hacerlo, lo hace. I am talking about you. That you're a good example because you're doing whatever you want to do, the way you do it. I mean, you are happy with, you do it, and that's what people have to learn to do.
Thank you.
Okay, así que libertad, esa es la palabra.
You're very kind, Nestor. You're going to make me blush, and I was trying to avoid that.
So I like people who dare to be themselves.
Sure.
Maybe I don't agree or agree, but that doesn't matter. What's the importance that I agree with you or I don't agree with you?
Yeah. It would be boring if we all had the same ideas, wouldn't it?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have always been, how would I say it? Like we're not people that like to follow crowds. We've never been that way. Even when we were within the Jehovah Witnesses, sometimes we speak that maybe we did things that were not, that may have been censorable, but like I used to like to dance and sing, and I learned to dance flamenco, and I loved it, and I love it. And I imagine there's not too many circuit overseers' wives or missionaries that do that. But we lived it on our terms, and that's what we loved about it. Spain was hard in a physical way, and we were able to overcome that. Bethel was harder, but it wasn't physical. We had all the luxuries we wanted in a way, but it was very hard on our thinking, on our heart, because we were not seeing that love that we were preaching.
Sure.
So, like Nestor said, and I agree, you have to learn to live on your own terms and stop thinking about having 1,000 friends, because 1,000 friends is too many anyway. Even if you have one good friend, you have a lot. And if you have yourself, you have it all.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, there's certainly more wisdom from you guys than I ever learned in decades of being a Jehovah's Witness. So thank you for those words of wisdom, and it's been a real honor and privilege to speak to you both. I've learned so much from hearing your story, and I hope it's not the last time we're in touch with each other either. Now that I know that there's potentially somewhere I can escape to in Puerto Rico where there's no reminders of Jehovah's Witnesses, then that's definitely in my thinking. But no, thank you so much to both of you. I really enjoyed this.
We've enjoyed it.
Take good care.
I will do. So viewers, I hope you've enjoyed this interview as much as I have. Please don't forget to subscribe to the John Cedars channel for more such interviews. And as always, thank you so much for watching.